Okay, we'll get started here. And any latecomers, we will have the recording for them. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Making It Easy, Enhancing the Online Focus Group Experience for Clients and Participants. We are going to get started with the content in just a second here, but first, I just want to go through the usual housekeeping items. Number one is questions. If you have questions, we want to hear them. So please use the Q&A panel to submit those, and we will either answer them live during the webinar here, or we will follow up with you after. If you type it in the chat instead, I'll do my best to find it, but you will have a better chance of getting it answered if you use that actual Q&A section, which is a different typing panel. And to answer the first question that I always get, yes, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar afterwards. So you'll receive it either later today or tomorrow, so that you can view the recording or pass it on to anyone else that you think might be interested. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to today's speaker, Candace Northey. itracks has been lucky enough to have Candace on our team for over 20 years now, many of which have been spent leading our operations and client services team. And if there's one team in itracks that stands out as the leader of the receiver of positive feedback, it would be Candace's team and their ability to provide a wonderful second to none experience for clients and participants. So Candace has worked with clients in a huge range of industries, some of which you can read up on the screen there, and has been witness to thousands of focus groups at this point. So if anyone is qualified to tell you what she's observed as far as the differences between a good and a bad client or participant experience, it's Candace. So thank you, Candace, for being here today. Thank you to our attendees for joining us. And again, don't forget to submit your questions. So with that, I'm going to get off the camera here and hand things over to Candace.
Well, thank you, Crystal. I am always appreciative of the kind introductions that you give me. As Crystal mentioned, I've been working in this industry and with itracks for quite a few years here. And I wanted to first talk about what we're covering today and where the information is coming from. So this is based off of our experience. There is a lot of stuff we can go into when we're talking about this particular topic. And I've tried to condense it to kind of like a more manageable bite-sized webinar that we're seeing here today. So I'm going to start with what we're covering. First of all, we're going to talk about how we define a good participant and client experience, kind of some top kind of keywords that I kind of have set aside for this. This is what makes a good participant or a good client experience. I also want to discuss the importance of a good experience for users in these roles, and then some simple actions you can take as researchers to elevate the research experience for your participants and your clients. So we are going to start with the participant experience. To get these to pull these together, I pulled on my own experience, but also talked to my team. And a lot of this is based off of what we see come into the help desk, what we see come in as feedback from participants who have done research studies in our software over time. So with that in mind, there's kind of three things that I point out as being benchmarks of what a good experience for participants look like. First of all, it has to be seamless. So it has to be easy for them. It has to be very accessible. It also has to be something that they can relate to, so they are willing to do it. It has to be a reasonable amount of work for the outcome. And one of the things we'll talk about later today is incentives. This is really important to make sure you're incentivizing your participants with the right amount for the work that they're doing, but also the outcome doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. It also has to be how well are my opinions going into the product that we're talking about? How engaged in the research am I, etc. And then of course it has to be engaging and fun. So it's surprising how many times we actually do get people coming back saying, hey, we did this research and we really had fun. I learned a lot about X product, or I learned a lot about this, or it was really great talking to people of similar mindset to me about why. So there is that opportunity for engagement, even in times where the discussion topics aren't that enticing. So why does the participant experience matter? Now, if you are a researcher, you probably know a lot of these things, but I can tell you that from my experience, bad participant experiences, make it so you do not get the data that you really need. The top thing is if you have participants having a good experience, they're more engaged. They're not rushing as much. If you're looking at asynchronous research, they're not just there answering the questions and leaving, and they're more interactive with other research participants. The quality of answers increases, if they're comfortable, if you really develop that rapport, etc. You're just going to get a better quality of answers, more thought out answers, etc. There's better follow-through rates. This is particularly important for asynchronous research and homework, but it does also move to the show rates that you get for your groups. If you have good communication, for example, which is one of the things I'll talk about in a minute, that'll make them more compelled to join the study and not just kind of go, oh, I'm not going to join today. It gives them the ability to focus on the topic at hand. If they're having any experiences that are not great, or they're not engaged in the topic, or they're just not enjoying the process, then they are not going to be focused on what you're asking them. And then it also makes it so you have the ability to give them more complex tasks like markup exercises, that sort of thing. If they're having challenges, even accessing the software or challenges with the research process, they're not going to want to do anything above and beyond the basics. So now I want to talk about the outcomes of a bad participant experience. So the main thing is going over time. As I'm sure some of you know, if you have an experience where participants maybe weren't sure what was going on, they showed up late, you started this study late, you're going to go over time, and that's not good for you or your clients, and your participants are not going to want to stay over time. They're not going to be excited about that. It also eats up your time, because then you're taking time answering questions unrelated to the research, and you don't necessarily want to do that. And then just general disengagement. So if somebody is having troubles, they're not going to engage in the research. And then ultimately it does result in lower future involvement in studies. So we see this quite a bit, once again, on the help desk, not as often as good responses. We do typically get better responses, but people saying, well, I don't want to participate in this type of research again. I don't like this. I didn't like the way that, I had to answer more questions than I wanted to, etc. Some examples of this, just kind of some more concrete examples for you for today is, when you're doing asynchronous research and you ask somebody to come in for 20 minutes a day, make sure the number of questions you have there are actually going to be 20 minutes a day and not 60 minutes a day. Same with if you are, if you're doing real-time research, that is really clear, for example, where they're going to, it's clear on what kind of link that they're going to get to log in and where that email is coming from, etc. So they know to look for the email. Those are both cases where I've seen people say, well, I didn't realize I was supposed to get a link from itracks to log in. The recruiter told me I was getting a link from something else. So that's something we'll talk about in a second. We just want to have clear communications. So I just said communications. So the first tip I always give is just make sure that your communications for participants are clear. I always start with set your expectations early and often and start with the recruitment. So make sure that your recruiter knows what type of software you're using, maybe even who the email is going to come from to invite them to the software. And then do things like maintaining consistent subject lines throughout the entire research process. I understand that a lot of times you have, maybe you have a recruitment team, and then you have another team that's doing kind of admin within your own account, or, maybe you're loading the users and sending them out in your account, or you're asking itracks to do that. You just want to make sure that there's certain things that are consistent. So instructions on what they need to do, how much time they're meant to participate, maintaining consistent subject lines. One thing that I can give as a quick tip is that we do have our standard email templates actually have a variable in it that says project name. And that project name is actually pulled from the participant project name within your project. So when you set up a project, you give the project a name, but that's kind of a name seen by observers and moderators. If you go into the settings of your project, there's actually a project name area where you can set a participant project name. And then if you make sure that that project name is the same as the project name that your recruiter's given you, that project name will follow through in the email. And then it kind of takes that out of there. You're not having to update things manually each time. And then also during housekeeping. So if you are doing in-person research, this means that you are setting expectations, saying this is how long we're going to be here, this is what we're going to do today, this is what we're talking about, etc. During that initial call, or the first part of your focus group or interview. And then in an asynchronous research setting, you'd be doing that, or a text chat, you'd be doing that via text. So something just also important to remember is if you are doing text-based research, you want to make sure that you're writing this out, anything that you would normally say verbally. I also say provide instructions at the time needed in format best suited for the study. So what I mean by this is there's sometimes an inclination to send everything with that initial invite. That's great. You can include it there, but then that makes your emails really, really long, and people really don't have the attention span they used to read through a really long email anymore. So in our invitations, we really over the years condensed it more and more, where we really at this point we have like, here you go, here's your link to log in, here's the tech support information. You can add a little bit more. This is, a 3-day study. You're going to be logging in, questions posted at midnight, but also make sure that realize that they're not going to read through all that and remember it. So if you put any additional instructions at the time they need it, and I'm thinking things like, here's how you do the markup exercise. Here's how you do a whiteboard survey that we're going to show you. You want to make sure that that's showing, or even I have this homework activity and here's your shopping activity. I'm going to include it here right where you need it, so you have it available for you at the time you need. And then the last thing I would say is it's really important that instructions for exercises outside the standard line of questioning is understood by the research team. So the example I think of here is if you are asking your participants to do a markup exercise, just make sure the research team that's moderating that focus group understands how that looks for the participants, so they can give appropriate instructions to the participants as they're doing the exercise. We try to make things as easy as possible. However, it's really good for you to understand that. Another example here would be screen sharing. We've have a lot of usability projects that happen in our real-time research studies, and where you have to ask the participant to share their screen and actually interact with the website, for example. You want to make sure that that you as the moderator or whoever else on your research team is helping that participant understands how to screen share from the participant's perspective. And then I have some software considerations for participants. The first thing I would say is easy yet secure login. I'm very excited that we have our user migration release happening right away. And this is going to allow for two-factor authentication. So we're getting rid of creating a password. And instead, everyone puts in an email address, and then they can get a verification code sent to them either via email or text. So it's really mirroring what we find on a lot of sites. For example, I logged into Facebook last week and I had to do two-factor authentication. So it's a similar thing. It's secure, but it's easy, and it's something that they're familiar with. No downloads. I've worked with platforms before where there is downloads required, and there is certain advantages to it, but there's also some disadvantages to it for people that might have older computers that might not be able to allow for, newer versions of software to be installed. You want to have an intuitive interface for your participants. Once again, it's one of those situations where I encourage you to look at it from the participant's perspective. Is it easy? Do they need to be given many instructions to actually do anything? Or do they just, is it obvious that you click this button to join? Is it obvious that you, how you join the study, etc. The ability to test in advance. We actually have a automated tech assessment tool that you can turn on your account or your project that lets people run through a tech assessment. Now, for you, if you're you people that are familiar with it, I know we're looking at making some additional improvements to it, but it does give you a pass-fail for the participants as well as the moderators, so you can see if they've passed or not. But they're able to do that in advance of the research, so you're not having to struggle during the time of the research. And we find that 90% of the time, if they pass that, then they are able to come in. And we're working on the other 10%. A lot of times we're finding that people are changing devices. People are changing networks. Networks a thing that our software team has just made a key update on letting more networks through. Or they're having bandwidth issues that are different from the different times that they've checked. And then an accessible help desk. So this is something that I strive towards. I try to make sure that we have a friendly, helpful help desk that is available when people need them at the times that they are requiring it. Next, I want to talk about the concierge services. So you may or may not want to use concierge services, just depending on what you are, depending on your project. We have two types of concierge services. We have what we consider our full concierge services, where you pay per hour for a concierge person to be in there and for the entire duration of your group. And then if you are an annual subscription holder with itracks, you have the opportunity to do a welcome service. So it's kind of a more limited concierge service where our team member will log in 15 minutes before and then stay 15 minutes after. So it's just a way to provide opportunities to some of our annual subscription holders to have concierge when they need it, as opposed to the entire duration of a session. Now, what is concierge? It is essentially technical support, but also a welcome service. So your concierge should log in 15 minutes beforehand. That's when your session opens. They will greet participants and test them with a final technical check to make sure that their audio and video works, and they'll work through with people. If they are having technical issues, then they'll pass the host seat over to whoever the research moderator is. And then from there, they'll watch for 15 minutes. And as long as there's no issues happening, they leave, and then they, go on and start the next group. Like I said, it doesn't have to be used. It's an optional service, but we do recommend that it's used in situations where you might be new to moderation. Like, let's say you have a new moderator on your team that has to kind of, fly solo essentially. And maybe they haven't used the technology for a while or never used the technology, and just gives them that little bit of comfort to have somebody there. Also, if you're using a feature you haven't utilized before, you might want to consider it when your clients are expecting a more elevated experience. So as an example here, I have a client that has been an annual subscription holder for I want to say 2 or 3 years. And then last year they realized, you know what, our clients are from a certain industry that they're kind of expecting somebody there to talk to them and hold their hand and like be there as that additional support. So they get the welcome service, and they found that it's really elevated their client experience because it makes them look really good and allows them just to focus on the moderation. Also working with more tech-averse demographics that may have more issues. So people that might have just general accessibility issues, like people lower levels of income, you might want to consider, because a lot of times those groups of people only have access to things like mobile devices and things like that. So which can increase the amount of tech issues that might happen. Older groups, so older generation persons, if you're doing groups with them, you might want to consider the service then. And then some of my clients, I have a few clients that do this. If they're doing interviews, they don't worry about it. They just run the interviews on their own. They don't worry about it. However, when they're doing focus groups, that's when they choose to actually go ahead and get the concierge service. And then finally, for the participant section here, I'd like to talk about incentives. And the reason why I talk about incentives is just because we get so many calls on the help desk about incentives, and itracks doesn't distribute the incentives. So just a couple things that I find that increases the participant experience or makes it a little bit better is just making sure that they are getting their incentives in a very quick manner, that they know where the incentive is coming from, who's responsible for sending it, and then they're given some sort of contact information for someone to go to with additional questions. It's a really frustrating experience for the participants to come to the help desk and for us to go, hey, we don't know this because we're not given this information. And actually, that's something to note too. If you ever book a project, there's actually an incentive information area that our help desk does refer to if there's anything in there, but a lot of our clients don't fill it out. So just a note there. Sometimes it's great just to have like a message somewhere for those participants so they absolutely know where the incentives are coming from and when they should expect to get it. I'm just going to take a quick sip. So next, we're going to go on to the client observer experience. So once again, I've kind of pushed this into or filtered this down to 3 kind of key things to be thinking about with the client observer experience and what the optimal client experience and what that looks like. So things that you should be thinking about. It should be easy. It should be flexible, and it should be collaborative. So why does the observer experience matter? Well, I'm sure you guys have, your own reasons, and it has a lot to do around revenue and retention and things like that. For me, I find that a really good observer experience also leads to a deeper understanding. Your client will have a better understanding of their customers and their market. It'll allow you and your research team to collaborate with them further and really kind of have them as part of that process. And then engagement. It's always great to see the back room going, wow, this is great. I love focus groups. And it's really fun. I love to see that. And I love to see when clients are like, oh, this person said this, or this person's right on, or this person has such an interesting view of what we're trying to tell them. And it's really good to see that engagement. So some factors that impact a good client experience, and this is a lot of times for new users of our software. The first of all is just confusion about what the moderator can and cannot do. So, and just a couple examples here, there's probably way more, but is the moderator able to unmute people, but are they able to unmute people? One of the things we have is a back room, and the moderator can mute that back room. And we've had situations in the past where the observer's been talking to the moderator, but she's muted the back room. And just controlling access to different media. Some clients might not understand that, hey, if you share a link within our software from the share area, that only is up for a little bit of time, and then it's taken away as soon as they stop sharing. So just understanding some of the moderator controls, what they can and cannot do, how they can move people into the waiting room or not, and kick people out and that sort of thing goes a long way. And then also not understanding how the back room works. I know we have a little bit of a unique situation with our software where clients can log in using their camera and microphone. And it's really important that the backroom know that they can't interrupt the discussion anyway. I think there's an assumption that, hey, I can hear it and my colleague can hear it. And, I'm just afraid that the participant could hear it. And, that has to be made clear. Also, sometimes we've had the opposite where the observer's been like, hey, I'm saying stuff from the back room and I'm saying something to the participant and they're not saying, you're not hearing me and they're not answering. And then also just not knowing how to send messages to the moderator, what the difference is between the direct message and so on. So sometimes it's just good for them to have that understanding of what the back room is and how it works. And so here's just a quick view of our back room. We have our main room on the left here. This is the moderator. At the bottom, we have 2 participants, and then the back room here, and the moderator's muted the back room, so the back room can have that internal chat without having to listen. Now, kind of similar to what we looked at with the participant, we also have special software considerations for the clients that I would say are important. Ease of access, of course, being one of them. No extra steps needed to hide from participants. I know in some tools, you have to elevate your observers or that sort of thing. You don't have to do that. As soon as they're set in the observer role within our software, there's no way that they can have access to anything the moderator has access to in terms of controls. And it's just automatically in that back room, etc. It has to be foolproof. I know that some of my clients are really nervous. They're like, oh, I don't want to do anything because I don't want to mess things up. That's not the case. You have to make sure that if you're looking for software, that's the case for them, that they can't mess anything up. A streamlined way to communicate with the moderator and have internal conversations that they need, and then in-moment collaboration. And then just some communication tips for clients. Send instructions on how the software works in advance. One of the things I talk about as well is just a dry run if they're brand new and maybe haven't done much research in the past. Prepare any instructions you might want to share with the backroom in advance. An example, maybe a welcome message. I've done concierge for years, and we actually have pre-created scripts that we just copy for each of our projects. And we just find it's really valuable. So we're not, even though we're typing or doing the same thing each time, it just is a time saver. So do that for yourself. And then any instructions you might need during the research. So, I'm going to meet you in the back room, or here's how you disable pop-ups. I say this one because we have a product called Fusion where there is a quant portion that the observers see things, the responses of the quant surveys come in real time. And one of the things that's important for the backroom to know is just how to disable pop-ups if they do need to pop that up in a new window and see that those charts coming in. And then just maybe a reminder what participants are actually seeing during certain activities, because as the example of Fusion, the observers see one view, the participants see one view, and then the moderators see another. And then we also encourage everybody to engage with clients throughout the research, asynchronous or real time. In real time, this is as simple as noting interesting comments. Oh yeah, Jenny said this is interesting. This is something we talked about in our kickoff call, and check in to make sure there's no additional probes. Most people do that, but it's a good reminder. And then dry runs. So as I mentioned, I do find this is really valuable. This can be as little as 15 minutes if you're accustomed to doing it. Just get some time on your client's calendar to see if they can log in advance of that first session, just to do a final dry run. And you can dry run your whole guide if you want to. You can show them media, etc. Basically, what you'll do is you'll set up a session, get your clients to log into an open session, and this just makes sure they're registered in advance of the research. That's kind of number one, they know how to get into the research. The link they use, and I usually put the dry run in the same project that I'm actually running the research in. And that just makes sure that they get into that project. And it's going to be the same link for all the activities in the project. So if they can register into your dry run, they can get in. It also makes sure they can get into the platform. They can see you as a moderator. Most times you'll join as the host, be like, oh, hey, backroom, can you hear and see me? I'm going to play some media. Make sure you can hear and see that. This is what you can expect during the research. Here's where you direct message me if you need to. Here's where you message the entire backroom, etc. And then finally, we want to build in some flexibility. Clients are busy. We absolutely know that they're not going to be able to attend every single session. So one of the things we just enabled on our software is the ability to allow access and transcripts right within the project. So clients can go in and they can log in and review any sessions that they might have missed. If you're doing this, just send instructions. We do have quite a few different video types or video files within that reports area. And you can allow them access the transcripts or not as well. So that's just kind of a setting. Yeah, so, and yeah, like I said, there's different types of recordings. So maybe your client just wants to see the screen share recordings and they can go straight to that with the filter and just make sure they know how to do that. And like I said, it's an optional setting. It's not turned on by default. It's something you can go in and turn on. And Crystal provided me with a area to do that. So you can see there's an edit settings here. You would go to your reporting and then you can allow playing back the audio video, but not downloading, and allow the downloading. And that is what I have for today. I'm hoping it was short and sweet for you guys. Any final questions?
Thanks, Candace. And yeah, if you have any questions for Candace, please put them now in that Q&A portion and we can get them answered for you. One question we have is just looking for examples of how to sort of make a boring topic more interesting. So what if you want to make it fun, but your topic is like politics or something?
Yeah, no, and that's a good one. I've seen studies where I thought that it was a very interesting topic. It was timely. It was, I wanted to see what people had to say about it. And then you look at it and you're just kind of like, oh, the research team were set up questions and left. And like, it was dry. If you have a boring topic, I saw this actually happen a couple of weeks ago. We had a study with toilet seats of all things. And the moderator kind of made a joke about it. She's like, you know what? We're going to be here for a couple hours and we're going to be talking about something that you would never know that we had so much to talk about. And so it was a bit of like, I don't want to say a joke, but it made the people more engaged. And yeah, she just kind of rolled with it and it was great. She was just able to present it in such a way that was very good and make people engage in the topic.
Awesome, thanks. And then we have a question from, I'm going to butcher this, Rosin Nolan. You said you were from Ireland and I'm butchering your Irish name, but they are wondering, do you have any AI capabilities for analysis? And I can answer that. So we do. We have a AI video indexer right now that you can use. All of the annual subscribers to Real-Time have access to it. It's currently in phase 1. We will be launching phase 2 August 10th, and it is going to do a whole bunch of cool things. So it will do AI analysis throughout your whole project across multiple interviews and groups, look for keywords, do sentiment analysis, pull all sorts of awesome things out of there. You'll be able to create visualizations. So if you want to do like a word cloud or a pie chart, as well as use AI to help you create highlight reels that can then use in your reporting and show to clients. So we're really, really excited for that. We are going to be sending out a bunch more information on that. And I have your email address from the registration. So I'll forward you some more information on that as well if you're interested. Okay, we have another question. So it says, thank you for your presentation, Candace. How can we ensure maximum participation in a group interview, which I'm assuming is like a focus group?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I am not a recruiter. I have a colleague, Adam Dumont, who does amazing work with recruitment. And I always tell people though, like, you want to start that engagement early in the process and make sure that people are confirming. Within our software, I mentioned the tech assessment, and I find, so I run numbers every month. I run a lot of different numbers. And one of the numbers I find is most interesting is looking at people that are no-shows versus people that have completed registration and tech assessment. And it is almost like 85% of the time, if they don't do tech assessments and don't do the registration, then they're probably not going to show. So there's always going to be some people that don't. You want to over recruit, of course, but engaging people early is a good way to do that. And then also kind of, I don't want to say forcing them because that's not a nice thing to do, but like making sure that they are doing that tech assessment as their confirmation ahead of time really goes a long way.
And just to kind of add on there, another thing that I have seen work in groups that I've been able to observe is making use of that direct message function. So you can private message participants as well. If you are in a group and you see someone that's a little quieter, you've always got your people who think quickly and take over a lot of the conversation, and those on the opposite side of things. I have seen moderators have success sending a private message that just says, hey, when so-and-so's done talking, can you expand on that? And it does kind of call them out and prompt them and let them know they're not flying under the radar by not speaking, but in a way that's respectful and doesn't call them out in front of everybody in the group.
And that's a good point. Like you also want to take advantage of, different ways of doing things. It doesn't have to be like anything technological, like a markup exercise, but even getting people to do pen and paper and writing their thoughts on pen and paper. So they, that type of thing, is helpful for making sure that people that are in your group are a little more engaged because they're always doing something rather than just listening to other people going through their answers. Because yeah, it gives them the opportunity to make notes and gives them time to talk. So
Okay, so that looks like all of our questions, and we're a little bit over time here, but really, really great conversation, great information. Thanks so much, Candace. And thanks to everyone who was able to join us today. Like I said, I will send out the recording as soon as I can, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And to our Canadians in the audience, have a great long weekend. Thank you.
thanks everyone. Bye.